The entire loft echoed with the aroma of fresh rain, crisp and moist, with a subtle undercurrent of soil, as if the downpour beyond the walls had slipped inside and claimed a corner for itself. It was early April in Seattle, where the skies seemed perpetually draped in layers of slate gray, turning the bustling city into a muted, introspective haze. Far-off thunder grumbled through the urban sprawl, a low vibration that resonated off the high-rises, while fat raindrops pattered insistently against the tall windows, like persistent visitors begging for entry. Inside, the atmosphere was cozy and stagnant, enveloping the compact space I shared with Mia, my closest confidant and roommate for the last 4 years. Our loft wasn't luxurious. A spacious open-plan living area that doubled as a dining space, a galley kitchen tucked into one wall, and 2 modest bedrooms branching off a short hallway, but it was our sanctuary, and that had always sufficed. I shut the door with a soft click, shrugging off my drenched raincoat as water beads scattered across the worn concrete floor. Polished from years of foot traffic, the lighting was subdued, with only a couple of floor lamps casting elongated shadows that danced lazily along the exposed brick walls. Mia was sprawled across the sectional sofa as if it were her personal throne, which, in fairness, it practically was. On any other evening, she'd have bolted upright, ribbing me about my soggy appearance or launching into one of her impassioned rants about the latest indie film she'd binge-watched. But tonight the vibe was off. She was unnaturally still, her head lolled against a throw pillow, one arm draped over her eyes. Even from across the room, I could spot the rosy tint to her skin and the way her auburn curls stuck damply to her temples. She wasn't merely exhausted. She was obviously ill. "Tough shift at the cafe?" I ventured, aiming for nonchalance as I towed off my mud-splattered boots. Mia let out a faint moan, peeking at me with one weary eye. "More like a brutal battle with this virus or whatever plague this is," she croaked, her voice hoarse and frayed at the edges. She coughed lightly, grimacing, then tugged the fleece blanket higher up her chest. "I'm convinced I picked it up from that tourist group who kept hacking without covering their mouths," she grumbled. I chuckled, draping my coat over the rack by the door. "You should demand biohazard bonuses in your next contract." She managed a feeble chuckle that dissolved into a sigh as she nestled deeper into the pillows. Mia was 28, a mere 6 months my senior, and typically a force of nature. Endless barista shifts, weekend hikes in the Cascades, spontaneous art projects that turned our loft into a chaotic studio. She bulldozed through life with infectious energy. Witnessing her like this, bundled up and depleted, stirred an odd sensation in me. Not unpleasant, just unfamiliar. Like peering behind a curtain I hadn't realized existed. I wandered into the kitchen and switched on the electric kettle, the soft whir cutting through the quiet. "Chamomile?" I offered, already rummaging for her favorite mug, the one with the quirky cat illustration she'd painted herself. "Yeah, that sounds perfect," she whispered, her words barely audible over the escalating storm outside. Rain sluiced down the panoramic windows overlooking the street, rivulets competing in erratic paths toward the frame. For a beat, I stood there, mesmerized, allowing the day's frustrations to melt away. It had been a grueling afternoon at the bookstore. Endless inventory checks, picky customers demanding obscure titles, and a malfunctioning register that tested my patience to its limits. Yet, returning to Mia always lifted the weight off my shoulders. Except for tonight, an inexplicable knot formed in my gut every time my gaze drifted to her, huddled and trembling beneath that blanket. "You resemble a vampire extra from a low-budget horror flick," I quipped, propping myself against the counter as the kettle bubbled to life. Mia huffed weakly and shifted her arm, fixing me with a bleary stare from both emerald eyes. "Thanks a lot, Jordan. You're a real pillar of encouragement." Her sarcasm was parched, but there it was, the glint I recognized so well. That resilient spark she harbored, even when her body betrayed her. The one that had drawn me in from our first awkward roommate interview years ago. What are pals for if not to dish out tough love? I retorted with a smirk, steeping the tea bag in boiling water. Vapor swirled upward, infusing the kitchen with a soothing herbal scent that mingled with the earthy rain aroma. I convinced myself this was routine, a stormy evening, a minor bug. Just Mia overplaying a sniffle. But as I ferried the mug to the coffee table and placed it within reach, she attempted to prop herself up, only to collapse back with a frustrated exhale. Ugh, I feel like absolute trash, she confessed, scrubbing a hand over her face. Her skin glowed with fever, her curls a tangled halo, and for the first time, she appeared vulnerable against the vast cushions, not frail, just profoundly human in a manner that caught me off guard. I slid the mug closer. Sip on this, I murmured gently. You'll bounce back. She attempted a grin, but it emerged tender, almost appreciative. You're glued to me regardless, she said softly, her fingers quivering as she grasped the handle. I laughed and settled into the armchair opposite her. Aren't I the fortunate one? Thunder boomed once more, resonant and profound, causing the loft's industrial windows to rattle. The space contracted, as if the tempest outdoors was inching nearer, probing for vulnerabilities. I attuned myself to the rhythmic downpour, the subtle warmth of the tea permeating the air, anything to distract from the peculiar twinge constricting my ribcage. She was merely under the weather. I was simply assisting. That's the essence of friendship, isn't it? But when Mia raised the mug and offered me a subdued smile over its edge, an intuition whispered that this night was veering into uncharted territory. The deluge intensified against the panes, submerging the loft's ambient hum. The air grew denser, laced with an indefinable charge. Mia remained coiled on the sofa, palms encircling her mug as tendrils of steam veiled her features. She'd only managed a handful of swallows, each gesture labored and weary, as though the illness had siphoned her vitality. This is ridiculous, she muttered, depositing the cup with a gentle tink. I can hardly muster the strength to move. I arched a brow, reclining with my limbs folded. Certain you're not hamming it up for pity points? She leveled a gaze at me, a blend of scowl and amusement. Quintessential Mia piercing through the exhaustion. Oh, absolutely, Jordan. I conjured this fever solely for your caregiving talents, she wheezed. I burst into laughter, shaking my head. If that's your scheme, it's bombing spectacularly, I replied, gesturing to the blanket sliding off her arm. You look like a taco that's unraveled mid-assembly. Mia snickered and readjusted the blanket. Harsh. I'm a gourmet taco, if you please. She endeavored to straighten her posture, but a grimace twisted her expression as she cradled her brow. Fine, whatever. But seriously, I need a shower. I feel gross. I cocked my head, observing her struggle for equilibrium. A peculiar blend of concern and warmth churned within me. You positive you can manage? You seem on the verge of keeling over. Mia sighed dramatically and slumped back. Don't jinx it. I'm already teetering. Another peal of thunder vibrated the structure, the lamps dimming momentarily. I extended my limbs and rose. All right, you theatrical diva. Up you get. I'll lend a hand. Can't risk you fainting and pinning it on me. She squinted at me, a subtle smirk emerging. You're for real? Dead serious, I affirmed, maintaining a breezy demeanor. What's a roommate for if not hauling you when you're wobbly? Mia's smirk mellowed into a gentler expression. Touché. Just promise no faceplants. I traversed the room and extended my palm. She clasped it, her touch chilled and unsteady, and I hoisted her upright with care. Her arm draped over my shoulders, her form heavier than anticipated. Warmth emanated from her hoodie, seeping into my side as we shuffled toward the corridor. You're radiating heat like a bonfire, I commented as we navigated the short distance to the bathroom. Lucky you then, she whispered, her head drooping a tad. The journey wasn't extensive, just a dozen paces, but each step felt deliberate, the atmosphere thickening around us like fog. I towed the bathroom door ajar and illuminated the space. The compact room featured sleek subway tiles and a vintage clawfoot tub we'd scored from a flea market, now adapted into a shower enclosure. As I cranked the faucet, Scalding water surged through the pipes, and mist ascended, enveloping the area in a humid embrace. Mia sagged against the vanity, drawing ragged breaths. "You all right?" I inquired, retreating slightly. She bobbed her head, albeit hesitantly. "Yep, just need a moment." Her grip on the counter was vise-like, and I paused. Ordinarily, she'd shoo me away. She was fiercely independent. But tonight, collapse seemed imminent. "Buddy, you're not exactly radiating reliability," I observed, arms akimbo. She glanced up, her green eyes reflecting the glow, and emitted a brief chuckle. "What, planning to babysit? Ensure I don't slip and sue?" I rolled my eyes, suppressing a grin. Enticing. "But honestly, need backup?" She wavered, then offered a modest, defeated shrug. "Perhaps. Just keep it chill," I scoffed. "Me? Always." Feigning casualness, I approached and aided her in peeling off the hoodie. She teetered, bracing on my shoulder, and I concentrated on stability, preventing a tumble, discarding the clammy garment. The steam had saturated the room entirely, blurring contours preventing a tumble, discarding the clammy garment. The steam had saturated the room entirely, blurring contours and infusing everything with a balmy haze. "All right," I declared, edging toward the exit with a playful wink. "That's my limit. I'm supportive, but boundaries exist." Mia laughed heartily this time, ragged yet authentic. "Chicken," she bantered, pivoting toward the cascade, one palm steadying against the tile. I dawdled briefly, attuned to the initial spray pattering the floor, its cadence harmonizing with the external torrent. "Holler if trouble arises," I advised, easing the door mostly shut. "Will do," her voice echoed faintly through the vapor. Returning to the living area, the chilled floor soothed my socked feet as I reclaimed the armchair. The gale persisted beyond the glass, thunder rumbling ponderously, yet the interior ambiance had shifted minutely, almost elusively. It was as if the loft itself anticipated something. I dismissed it as overthinking, just aiding a ailing companion. But as the shower droned on and thunder reverberated through Seattle's skyline, that elusive flutter in my chest intensified, demanding acknowledgement. The persistent flow of water saturated the loft, intertwining with the relentless rain. I extended my legs, fixating on the exposed beams overhead as if they held answers to my restless mind. The space was otherwise serene, save for the tempest, the plumbing's murmur, and sporadic faint noises from the bathroom, Mia adjusting the spray or shifting weight. I'd left the door ajar, half anticipating a plea for aid or a witty retort, but silence prevailed. For now, the abandoned mug lingered on the table, its contents cooling. I pondered brewing another for myself, but inertia pinned me in place. Memories flooded in unbidden. Our first meeting at a mutual friend's party, where Mia's infectious laugh had cut through the crowd. The late-night talks on this very sofa about dreams and fears. The road trips we'd taken to escape the city's grind. She'd always been the anchor, the one who grounded me when life spun chaotic. But tonight, roles reversed. And with that shift came questions I wasn't ready to voice. Why did her vulnerability tug at me so profoundly? Why did the simple act of helping feel laden with significance? The storm swelled, wind howling against the building like a symphony of unrest. I rose eventually, pacing to the window, pressing a palm to the cool glass. Below, streetlights blurred through sheets of rain, cars sloshing through puddles. A muffled thud from the bathroom snapped me back. "Mia!" I called, striding toward the door. No response. Heart quickening, I pushed it open wider. She was slumped against the wall, water cascading over her, eyes squeezed shut in discomfort. "Hey, you okay?" I asked, voice laced with worry. She nodded faintly, but her pallor told otherwise. "Dizzy spell. Stupid fever." Without overthinking, I grabbed a towel from the rack and shut off the water. "Come on, let's get you out." Wrapping her in the fluffy fabric, I guided her to sit on the edge of the tub, her weight leaning into me. The steam clung to our skin, the room a cocoon of warmth and intimacy. "Thanks," she murmured, her head resting briefly on my shoulder. That contact sent a jolt through me, familiar yet electric. "Any time," I replied. helping her dry off and into fresh pajamas we'd stashed nearby. The process was awkward, filled with light-hearted jabs to ease the tension. Don't flatter yourself. I've seen worse at the gym, I teased as she slipped into a loose tee. Once settled back on the sofa, bundled anew with a fresh blanket, Mia looked marginally revived. You're a lifesaver, Jordan. Seriously. I waved it off, but inside warmth bloomed, not from the tea but from something deeper. As the storm raged on, we chatted idly about nothing and everything, the night stretching longer than planned. Laughter returned, tentative at first, then fuller. But beneath it all, that unnamed charge lingered, hinting at a shift in our dynamic. Friends? Absolutely. But perhaps as the rain finally tapered to a drizzle, something more was brewing in the quiet aftermath. The mug of chamomile tea sat cooling on the coffee table. Its final curl of steam vanished into the dim light of the lamp, etching a subtle ring into the oak surface. I debated brewing another just to occupy my fidgety hands, to drown out the whirlwind in my mind. A sharp crack of thunder rattled the windows, jolting me upright. My eyes darted to the hallway, where a fresh plume of steam was now seeping out, lazy and ethereal, like a specter meandering through the apartment. It brought with it the sharp citrusy tang of Jordan's body wash, the same one she'd insisted on since we first signed the lease. Back when we bickered over closet space and who got the window with the better view, 4 years of her whirlwind energy, her laughter echoing off the walls, her essence woven into every nook of my routine. Yet tonight the air hummed with an undercurrent of change. Not explosive, but subtle, like the last tumbler falling in a lock. The shower hissed to a stop with a familiar groan. I sat up straighter, straining to hear. You didn't drown in there, did you? I called out, aiming for nonchalance but landing somewhere near concern. A beat of silence, then her voice floated back, husky and affectionate through the misty veil. Yeah, hold on a minute. The shuffle of a towel, the patter of bare feet on the cool tiles. I snatched the extra one I'd slung over the chair arm and headed down the hall, pausing just shy of the bathroom door. It creaked open, and there she was. Jordan, hair plastered and dripping, a towel cinched loosely around her torso, propping herself against the jamb as if debating whether gravity was worth the fight. Whoa, I said, lobbing the towel her way. You look like a soggy kitten, but at least you're a fresh one. She snagged it mid-air, chuckling as she scrubbed it through her curls. Coming from you, Taylor? That's practically a compliment. Her skin was still pink from the heat, but the shower had worked wonders. Her eyes brighter, though each step betrayed lingering exhaustion. I moved in to offer a hand, but she brushed it off with a weary smile. I'm good, mostly. She padded past, leaving faint wet prints on the floorboards. I trailed after, scooping a throw blanket from the sofa and offering it as she collapsed into the cushions. Feeling any better? I asked, tucking it around her. Yeah, she sighed, burrowing deeper. Hot water's a miracle worker. She tipped her head back, eyes fluttering shut. The room filled with the gentle patter of rain outside and the even cadence of her breaths. I settled on the coffee table's edge, facing her, fingers drumming idly on my knees. The steam lingered, blurring the room's sharp lines, and that persistent tug in my gut intensified. Then her eyes opened, locking onto mine. The playful glint was absent. Hey, she said softly, her words nearly swallowed by the storm. You ever wonder if we're meant for something more than just roommates? My breath hitched, the world narrowing to that fragile query suspended between us, raw, vulnerable, a spark that could ignite or fizzle. I could deflect, spin it into a joke, but her gaze held steady, probing. I opened my mouth, faltered, then forced the words out. Yeah, I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. I have. Her brows arched in mild surprise, then her face relaxed into something tender. Good, she replied, easing back. Because same here. A knot in my chest unraveled, not with fear, but with a quiet exhale of pent-up tension. For real? I pressed. She nodded, her eyes unwavering. You think I'm just the one who brews soup when you're down for the count? She let out a soft laugh, and I mirrored it with a grin. You crash and burn pretty often, I teased. Lucky for you, I've got your back. I leaned in, elbows on thighs, truly seeing her. The water droplets tracing her collarbone, the blanket cocooning her, that subtle fire in her stare. You do, I said. It was straightforward, yet it carried the weight of an unspoken vow. She didn't respond immediately, just dipped her chin in acknowledgement, a gentle smile curving her lips. Beyond the windows, rain drummed a soothing lullaby. The tempest raged on, but inside warmth bloomed, a sanctuary amid the chaos. Perhaps this was our inevitable destination, unearthed by one stormy evening. Come dawn, the downpour had mellowed to a whisper against the panes. Sunbeams pierced the curtains, striping the floor in gold. I stirred in the recliner, neck protesting the awkward angle, the cushion askew on the rug. The place was hushed, unnervingly so after the night's revelations. I lingered, staring at the ceiling, piecing together the fragments. Everything ought to feel transformed after her words, my reply, but the space was unchanged. Mugs scattered on the table, blanket rumpled on the sofa, the earthy scent of rain persisting. I yawned and eyed the couch. Vacant. The blanket neatly-ish folded. Jordan nowhere in sight. My insides twisted. Relief mingled with a pang I couldn't label. Maybe she'd retreated to her room. Or perhaps she was rewriting the narrative, erasing last night. Either way, it stung. Groaning, I rose and shuffled to the kitchen, feet silent on the cool floor. Then, the tink of a fork on porcelain, the sizzle of eggs in a pan. Jordan stood there, barefoot on the linoleum, flipping breakfast as if it were routine. Morning, she said, voice gravelly but stronger than before. She wore faded yoga pants and a tank top, her hair a wild tangle, remnants of the night clinging to her. Morning, I replied, propping against the island. She shot me a sidelong glance, lips quirking. You look like you wrestled a bear in your sleep. I chuckled, raking fingers through my bedhead. Blame your blanket-hogging tendencies. She shrugged and slid a plate my way. Scrambled eggs, toast, the works. Payback for the body wash rescue. The aroma hit me as I dug in. Silence stretched, comfortable rather than strained, like the universe was pausing for us. Last night looped in my brain, her query, my confession, the chasm between us shrinking. I braced for regret, the flood of doubts, but none came. Just a serene acceptance that surprised me. So, she ventured, breaking the quiet as she leaned on the counter, plate in hand. What now for us? I met her eyes, sunlight dancing in them, known yet novel. No flawless script, but maybe we didn't require one. Here, I said. This is good for starters. Jordan's smile bloomed, genuine and bright, and she clinked her fork against mine in a makeshift toast. Here it is. Outside, residual raindrops traced the windows, refracting light like prisms reluctant to descend. For the first time in ages, alignment felt real. You're not gonna ghost me now, huh? I paused mid-bite, bemused, and Jordan's grin widened, that signature mischievous curve. What? She twirled her fork. You know, the feelings talk equals eternal awkwardness vibe. I get how your mind ticks, Taylor. I rolled my eyes, though she nailed it. My brain was already cataloging shifts. Would work dynamics change? Family reactions? Friends' judgments? Not that I'd spilled to anyone. It's not like that, I countered, folding my arms. I'm right here, aren't I? She cocked her head, appraising. Yeah, but you've got that flight or fight stare like you're mentally drafting escape routes. I burst out laughing. Spot on. Maybe. Pro, you cook killer eggs. Con, you're a drama queen with a sniffle. Jordan's laughter rang out, full and freeing, dissolving my lingering tension like mist in the sun. Touché, she said, beaming. The toaster popped and she pivoted to butter slices, her posture loose, unhurried. I observed the way she hummed under her breath when focused, how her tank strap slipped off her shoulder. She was still Jordan, The one who'd coerce me into spontaneous road trips, debate sci-fi plots till dawn. But layered now, deeper. You bouncing back? I asked. She nodded. Not peak form, but surviving. Thanks to your TLC, I waved it off. Just roommate duties. Her smirk softened, eyes warming. You're ace at it, caring for folks. My throat constricted. I stared at my plate, stirring remnants. Only the ones who matter, I murmured. Lifting my gaze, I caught her steady, affectionate look from the prior night. Glad I'm on the list, she whispered. The kitchen shrank, intimate, charged with unspoken understanding. Rain's faint cadence persisted on the panes. I savored my breakfast, warmth easing my jitters. Sure, complexities loomed, time to navigate them. But as Jordan elbowed me playfully, grinning like old times, I grasped it didn't need to overwhelm. Not with her. The weeks following that stormy confession unfolded gently, routines resuming with a fresh underlay. The tempest had cleansed the streets, leaving sidewalks glossy, air crisp. Back home, our patterns realigned. Jordan's flu, a distant echo, me buried in graphic design gigs, screen glare eternal. Yet we weren't unchanged. She'd perch nearer on movie nights, her hand grazing mine, catch my glance over cereal, winking like conspirators. It was a crisp Friday afternoon, 2 weeks on when the puzzle fully assembled. Twilight hues bathed the den in amber. Jordan lounged on the sectional, feet propped, thumbing through a magazine. Fancy a hike? She tossed out, eyes glued to the page. I peered up from my sketch pad by the window. Forecast says showers, I noted, gesturing at the gathering clouds. She discarded the mag with a shrug. We've got rain gear. Come on, Taylor, adventure calls. That glint in her eyes, the one that always reeled me in. I sighed, capping my pen. All right, but if I catch your bug, you're on nurse duty. Bargain, she quipped, lacing her boots with a smirk. We ventured out as sprinkles commenced, sporadic and cool, tapping the concrete. Jordan unfurled her umbrella, angling it to shield us both. We strolled shoulder to shoulder, the neighborhood alive, bikes whizzing by, vendors hawking umbrella. We ventured out as sprinkles commenced, sporadic and cool, tapping the concrete. Jordan unfurled her umbrella, angling it to shield us both. We strolled shoulder to shoulder, the neighborhood alive, bikes whizzing by, vendors hawking umbrellas, street lamps flickering on early. See, refreshing, she said, nudging me. I feigned annoyance but stayed close, her warmth seeping through. Lucky it's not a monsoon. Her chuckle merged with the drizzle's murmur. We meandered wordlessly at first, tracing well-trod paths, by the bakery where we'd once debated pie flavors till closing, the alley with the mural she'd helped paint during a community event. Comfortable as ever, but laced with novelty, tangible, reassuring. You're awfully pensive, she observed, halting under a canopy of leaves, rain pattering above. Droplets beaded on her lashes. Spill. I paused, hands in pockets. You, us, how it's evolved. Her smile gentled as if anticipating. Evolved isn't awful, is it? I held her gaze, inviting, sincere, and shook my head. Nah, it's right. The shower intensified, herding us to a nearby bookstore cafe. We claimed a nook by the shelves, steam from lattes rising as rain smeared the view. You know, she mused, frothing her drink, I half expected you'd freak post-confession. I arched a brow. What, bolt for the hills? She grinned over her cup. You're not the most laid back, I smirked. And you're a walking tornado. Yin and yang, she countered. Conversation flowed, mocking the cafe's eclectic playlist, reminiscing botched DIY projects, pondering weekend getaways. No grand gestures, just us chuckles mingling with the storm's symphony. It sufficed, abundantly. Hours later, homebound, we lingered on the fire escape. Drizzle eased to mist. Jordan rested on the rail, latte cradled, and I flanked her, elbows brushing. This works, she said, voice low, introspective. Yeah, I agreed, the certainty rooting in my core. It does. The skyline shimmered below, veiled in fog. Worries of judgments, timelines faded. This was ours, pure and simple. We stood aligned as rain dissolved into dusk. And I knew we'd chart the path ahead together.